So welcome everyone to this YCIF event. My name is Guillaume Sinet from the Montreal chapter, and I'm here today with my colleague Saif Ashmi from the Toronto chapter. We are very honored to welcome Mr. Raymond Chrétien, who has agreed to share with us his thoughts on the impact of the US elections on the Canada-US trade relations. So as per our usual format for our YCIF event, I'll proceed with a short introduction of Mr. Chrétien, and then Mr. Chrétien will make his presentation and we'll have a Q&A period afterwards. The event will finish no later than 1:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Mr. Chrétien, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure being here.
Excellent. So let me introduce you, although you are, I think, already known and we have presented your extensive bio in the invitation for the event. I won't read it all together because it's going to take all of our time. So let me just say that you have a distinguished career in the public sector where you had many appointments, including the one that is more specific for our event today. You were appointed as Ambassador of Canada to the US. And you're now a partner and strategic advisor at Fasken, and you advise many clients and governments on trade relations with the US. So without further ado, Mr. Chrétien, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Thank you very much, Saif, for your kind invitation. I accepted it gladly because a long time ago, I was also a young professional, so I was remembering my own growing up as a public servant, probably at the age that you have right now. And that's why I'm happy to talk about an issue that is of interest to all of us. The Canada-US relationship, the recent US elections, what it means nationally, what it means internationally, and what it means specifically for the Canada-US relationship. First, the elections, I guess they have taken place. I was a bit surprised about the outcome. I expected a slightly bigger majority for President-elect Joe Biden. I guess the pundits and the press were wrong in many ways. Though we know the results right now, the popular vote, more than 5 million votes for Mr. Biden, more than President Trump. Electoral College, Mr. Biden has over 300 votes right now. We will know the result on the 14th of December, next month, when the Electoral College will formally render the verdict of the Electoral College. So the way things are going, we're heading towards a Biden presidency, despite the various legal challenges put out by Mr. Trump and his colleagues. A few words about this election. I guess I was surprised because first of all, Mr. Trump has received more votes now than he received 4 years ago. So whatever happens in the years to come, you cannot ignore the fact that the country is profoundly divided, profoundly polarized. Now we will also know pretty soon the results of the Senate. At the moment, the Senate appears to remain in the hands of the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell will become an even more powerful man in Washington in the years to come. In the House, the Democrats have lost a couple of seats. So again, it's a divided executive power and legislative power in the U.S. We'll know about the Senate in January. There are 2 seats still to be decided in Georgia, but they look as if they're going to remain in Republican hands. So what's happening now? There's what I call the interregnum, the transition. President Trump has not conceded; he doesn't have to legally. It's a nice tradition. Will he respect it or not? We will know in the weeks and the days and weeks to come. We still have 2 months to go. He has full executive powers until January the 20th. Clearly, it's not a smooth transition. It's not an easy transition. There's no connection yet formally between the outgoing administration and the incoming one of Joe Biden. You have heard already many of the decisions announced by President Trump not only about his legal challenges, but also about many changes within the administration. He has fired a couple of key people, the Secretary of Defense. Just that normally would have been a huge news, but today with this flow of news, every day brings its lot of surprises. It has not gone unnoticed, but it has been replaced by other significant news following the firing of a number of key people within the administration. I guess President Trump wants to appoint, especially on the military side, some of his own people. So in case he needs to take some tough decisions in the weeks and months to come on issues like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. You heard what he announced yesterday: withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan and Iraq down to 2,500 in each country. Threats on Iran. That's a pretty dangerous game for this kind of interregnum. But this is where we are. I'm just telling you, stay tuned, because there will be a lot of surprises between now and the end of January. Now, on the Biden side, President-elect Biden is doing his best to try to connect with the outgoing administration. He has appointed a committee to deal with the pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemics. Clearly, it's going to be his biggest issue upon arrival in power at the end of January. He has appointed some of his key people in the key positions, his chief of staff, and a few others. I expect that in the days and weeks to come, you'll learn about the new Secretary of State, the new National Security Advisor, and his key secretaries, the equivalent of our ministers in Canada here. You'll probably see a very strong and diverse cabinet. I don't know if you'll see Bernie Sanders coming back into government, but it'll be very interesting to see how he balances his cabinet. Clearly, he has indicated that he would be a president of transition, not a transformative president. So the people around him will have a lot of authority and power. A word about Kamala Harris, his choice as vice president, the vice president-elect. I guess this is a good choice for Canada. First of all, Biden himself is a good choice for Canada because he knows us very well. You might not know this, but through his first wife family, they had links with Toronto, so he used to go to Ontario quite often. Recently, or during his long time as a senator, especially in charge of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Biden came to Canada many times. And just a couple of years ago, our Prime Minister, I don't know if it was by chance or well thought out approach, invited Biden at the time of vice president to come to Ottawa, and he received him almost as a president. So it was a very warm couple of days in Ottawa, and I'm sure that Mr. Trudeau never expected that the same man would come back or could come back 4 years later as the president of his country. So at least we have an executive team that knows Canada very well, and that is very positive. It's a good start. I'll come back to this later on about what it will mean for issues. Now, maybe a few words about what to expect. What does this new administration mean in terms of objectives? What's their vision of the years to come, both nationally and internationally? Nationally, I guess for weeks we have heard Biden talking about his platform. He clearly the challenges are known. The first one will be the pandemics. He has already established his own team in charge of this hugely devastating challenge facing the U.S. right now. And then, of course, the economy is also very well mixed up with this pandemic. There are more than 40 million unemployed Americans. Now, with this resurgence of the virus, the economy is going down again. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge to reconcile the fight against the pandemics and try to kickstart the American economy. Also, climate change is very high on the agenda of this new administration. Biden has indicated that he wanted to be a green president. Clearly, one of his objectives will be probably to launch a huge infrastructure program. He has talked about $1 trillion, that's $1,000 billion, with a very green component to it. So it remains to be seen if he will be able to do this with a Republican-controlled Senate. But clearly, he wants to be a green president. Obviously, he has to deal with racial inequalities as well. We have seen the violence in the streets of the U.S. for the last couple of months. Many big cities are still barricaded, as we say in French, protecting themselves against potential violence in the street. This remains a big issue for our neighbors. Finally, healthcare. Healthcare for us Canadians, it's difficult to understand that the richest country in the world has not been able to do better on the healthcare front. There are still 28 million Americans without any access to any kind of healthcare system. So he will be pushed certainly by Bernie Sanders on this issue, and very hard. So these are probably his biggest objectives, challenges on the domestic front. Now internationally, more than a few words. I guess first of all, a Biden presidency will be far more predictable than the last one. The whole planet has been on edge for the last 4 years about the tweets of President Trump, not knowing if it meant real policy or just a whim, a desire on his part. It'll be more predictability, and that I think is very important. And also the tone will change a lot. We have seen it here in Canada when President Trump came to Charlevoix, the G7 summit a couple of years ago. Came in late, left early, insulted our leaders while he was there, refused to sign the official communique. So this kind of, I guess, of approach, brutal, direct, is going to be, will not be followed by Biden. Biden is probably the most experienced person coming into power insofar as international relations are concerned. Joe Biden has dealt with foreign affairs for his whole life, for last 25 years. So he's coming to the job with a lot of contacts around the world, his own lived experiences of the last decades. So that's also a good news. He will be more, the tone will change, more amicable, more friendly. But remember one thing: the Americans are the Americans. They're powerful. They're rich. They never compromise on their hard interests. But it'll be done in a different tone, more pleasant. He will be a more multilateral president than President Trump. President Trump, over the last couple of years, as you all know, tended to favor a more bilateral approach. He wanted to deal with countries, not necessarily with big organizations, and that will be a return to multilateralism with Joe Biden. He has already indicated that he wanted to rejoin the Paris Agreement on the environment, which is very important for the world and very important for Canada. He wants to abolish the decision of President Trump to cut the financing to the World Health Organization, perhaps join the Trans-Pacific Partnership again. We'll see. L'Organisation Mondiale du Commerce, the OMC, clearly the Trump administration didn't pay any attention to it, refused to appoint judges on the appellate board of the World Trade Organization. The UN, not of great importance to Trump. All those organizations that have ensured the prosperity and security of the free world since the end of the war in 1945 will be re-dynamized or you'll try to re-dynamize them in the next few years to make sure that the whole system doesn't fall apart. Serious damage has been done to these institutions. First, I'm worried about whether or not President Biden will succeed, but he will certainly try. Now, a few other consequences. He will want to reestablish personal connections with what I call the traditional allies of the U.S. Countries like Germany. It's never connected with Angela Merkel. Countries like Japan, France with Macron, it started well, but kind of went sour later on. South Korea. the more traditional friends of the U.S. will play a bigger role in his certainly in his views about how to manage the problems of the world. Now, on the Canada-U.S. front, let me say a few words. I was involved for the last 4 years on behalf of the Quebec government in dealing with some trade policy issues like softwood lumber and the renegotiation of the NAFTA. The last 4 years have not been easy for our government in Ottawa. Why? Essentially for one reason. It started well. Mr. Trudeau did his very best to try to connect with President Trump and his team. But then we were kind of forced to the table with the Mexicans to renegotiate the original NAFTA. And this was very difficult, a painful negotiation, and it created bad feelings all around. And I must say that even though I do not approve of some aspects of the way our foreign policy is carried out in Ottawa these days, I have only good things to say about the way the Canada-US relationship was managed by our government in Ottawa. They put into place a team, a nonpartisan team, conservative, liberal premiers in Canada, Republican, Democrat governors in the US, the business community, leaders in the Senate and the House of Representatives, both Republicans and Democrats, to make them understand the importance of Canada for the US. The fact that we are the most important market for 35 states of the Union, the fact that it's $2 billion a day of trade, the fact that the border is crossed 400,000 times daily by Canadians and Americans, all those facts to try to make the Americans understand the importance of supporting us in our key objectives in this new NAFTA. We call it the AECUM in Quebec here. Let's call it NAFTA 2 for you guys in the rest of the country. So this has been painful. So now I guess in Ottawa they're looking forward to an easier relationship with the US. But let me tell you, it's not going to be that easy. There are some big issues to be decided. But clearly, watch carefully. First of all, where will be the first visit abroad by President-elect Biden? Mr. Trudeau has already talked with Biden. I guess they have connected. I guess he was perhaps the first Western leader to talk to the new president. Normally, in addition that a new president in the U.S. comes to Canada first. President Trump didn't follow that tradition. So hopefully it'll be reinstituted so that access by our leaders, by our cabinet ministers, by our businessmen in Washington or in various parts of the U.S. will be better through this connection at the top. Based upon my own experience in Washington, I was there a long time ago. I arrived in Washington in 1994, 25 years ago, more than 25 years ago. At the time, it was easy because it was full employment, wealth on both sides of the border. It was 87% of our exports going to the U.S. The connection at the top between Bill Clinton and our prime minister at the time, Jean Chrétien. If you close your eyes, you think it's Jean Chrétien talking to you and not Raymond. It was absolutely essential for the decision makers on both sides of the border to know that the friendship, the kind of shared philosophy at the top would allow for a better discussion and a better resolution of our conflicts. Now we will have that between Trudeau and Trump. Now, what are the issues? First one that comes to my place is the border. The border has been closed now since last March. It's a long border. It used to be the longest undefended border in the world. It's more militarized now since 9/11 events. It's closed. I'm told that only about 10% of people are crossing the border now compared to the situation before the pandemics. And on the trucking side, 70% of trucks are still going back and forth because they're deemed to be essential for the supply routes of both countries. So the border is important. When will it be reopened? I cannot tell you. The way things are going on the pandemics, I see it closed for quite some time, certainly till the end of this year, maybe longer. With the numbers on the US side, now there's a strong perception by Canadians that we should not reopen the border. Now, the situation is not easy in Canada as well, so this will remain a major obstacle for tourism, flights back and forth, cars back and forth. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are crossing the border every winter to go to Florida. Their plans are being changed for the great majority of them. So the border, hugely important. Now the issue of protectionism. This, interesting, President Trump was a protectionist president, despite the fact that he's a Republican. He has imposed tariffs on our exports of aluminum, steel, other agricultural products. What was not appreciated in Ottawa, in Canada, is that he used the argument of national security. He used Article 232 of the Trade Expansion Act to impose those tariffs upon our exports. And this, I was involved in this issue. Not easy to fight this. The government in Ottawa took a very strong attitude, and we succeeded in having them removed by threatening to retaliate for dollar for dollar. But so this issue of protectionism will not disappear with Biden. Already, all his indications are that his big infrastructure program will be for Americans to protect American jobs. So we will probably see popping up in various parts of the U.S. what I call Buy American provisions all across the board. So we'll have to, as a country, watch carefully what, especially the big states are doing, so that our companies, our construction companies, are not prevented from bidding on public projects in the U.S. So protectionism, what this is going to be very important. What will a greener U.S. mean for Canada? That's good overall. There'll be a greater understanding on what our objectives are, and the way the Biden administration is moving will be less of a threat to our own companies that were perceived to be, or were seeing themselves penalized by having to meet more strict standards than their competitors in the U.S. So on the environment, certainly a better alignment of forces. Now, another big issue for Canada will be, for those who might be listening from Western Canada, the Keystone XL pipeline issue. Big issue for us, a big issue for Alberta. President-elect Biden has indicated already, has repeated it during the campaign, that he opposes that project. If you remember, Obama killed it also. President Trump resurrected the issue by saying that he was going to issue the permits to allow the construction of that pipeline. And now Biden is saying, as soon as I'm in the chair, this project will disappear. Now, big issue for Alberta. Mr. Kenney, Premier Kenney of Alberta, will certainly be on Ottawa's back right now. He's already indicating that this project has to be resurrected, and this is going to be a big challenge for how to try to change Biden's mind on on this issue. We'll see. Another issue, Anwar, in the Arctic Circle, the drilling there. Mr. President Trump, before he leaves office, wants to allow drilling in Anwar, in the Arctic Circle. If he does it in the next 2 months, again, that'll be a big issue for Canada. We have always fought this issue to a nail. Another issue will be defense. During my time in Washington, it's a long time ago, but it was the Democrats in power. One issue that kept coming back was defense. I mean, our budget, our military budget. The Americans are never happy with the budget of Canada on military spending. I remember being told quite often, sometimes in a friendly way, but along the following ones: why you Canadians are you allowing your army to go from 115,000 to 95 to 85 to now 75,000 soldiers? We don't like that. The Americans are perhaps the only country in the world that likes to have its neighbors military powerful, and this is not going to ease. The pressure to increase our military budget will not decrease with the arrival of Biden as president. China is a big Canada-US issue as well. The reason I'm mentioning this is that if our two partners, our two main partners are the US and China. It's going relatively well with the US, but we have a big problem with China because of the US extradition request to get Man Wanzhou brought back to the US to face trial there for having violated the American sanctions against Iran. The trial is going on right now in Vancouver. I don't know how it's going to go, but it has created a big problem for Canada. The Chinese have reacted very, very negatively to the arrest of Man Wanzhou. First of all, because of her position. Second, in command within Huawei, and also because the CEO of Huawei is one of the close friends of Xi Jinping, the president of China. So the Chinese have reacted, I would say violently, but very, very strongly. And it's clear to me that until this issue is resolved, if the Americans were to drop their request, or God knows if she's freed by the tribunal, we'll know. Until she's freed, this relationship with China will remain very difficult for us, and the two Michaels will remain, unfortunately. Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig will remain in jail for some time. So it's probably the most important challenge facing Canadian diplomacy right now, but it's connected with the US, and hopefully recently the government in Ottawa is under tremendous pressure to liberate those two Michaels. President Trump has been approached, has been asked, maybe he has done a few calls, I don't know, but hopefully a Biden president will react more positively to Canadian requests to get some support. On this issue, Canada with 37 million people is no match for China. We need to have a coalition of countries pushing in the same direction on the protection of human rights, and certainly the liberation of those two Michaels, to underline to the Chinese that this kind of precedent will not work for Western countries. So these are some of the issues facing Canada in the years to come. If I don't know if Ottawa has made some kind of post-mortem of the last 4 years, but clearly somebody in Ottawa must be thinking about what the next 4 years will bring to us as a country, what challenges will be there, and what kind of measures, what kind of coalition, perhaps the existing one or new ones, put in place to deal with the Biden presidency and his cabinet secretaries. But I must tell you, to finish this short presentation before we have the questions and answers, I feel this morning or noon, that's just for us, probably for you morning, reassured and confident about the next couple of years. About the Canada-US, I'm far more worried about the state of the world than about the state of the Canada-US relationship. It's really what we're discussing this morning is taking place against an international background that is indeed worrisome. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Comments or questions?
Right. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead with the question. So I'll ask first question. You were talking about the challenges. I'm just curious, what would be your advice to Kirsten Hillman right now, given the transition is going on over the next 2 months and the challenges right now we're having in terms of the transition? What would be your advice if you were to give something?
Good question. Kirsten Hillman, of course, I deal with her right now. I know her very well. She knows me very well. She reminded me, she said, Raymond, you had my chair 25 years ago, so you know how I feel on certain days. My advice to her would be for the next 2 months, until the end of the transition period, keep a low profile. President Trump still has full executive powers. He still has the authority to take some measures that could hurt our interests. He could decide tomorrow, next week, to impose, again, tariffs on some of our export. So my advice would be keep a low profile. Actually, all countries of the world, all ambassadors in the US are doing this now. They don't want to bring the attention of their country to the outgoing administration. And then I would say, as the second part of my advice would be, listen, connect, or try to see who's coming into power. Who are the men and women who are going to be the new powers to be in Washington? Try to make a list of these people and try to connect with them discreetly before they assume power at the end of December. So already, I can tell you, I'm sure the embassy does that. You know, this is a big embassy we have in Washington. I headed it for almost 7 years. So it's almost a kind of mini government in Washington. They are doing this. And already I see names popping up, emerging on the horizon that I like. Susan Rice, for instance, is strongly rumored to be the next Secretary of State. I dealt with her when I was in Washington. She was a young director of North American Affairs in the State Department. Her boss was Richard Holbrooke, who used to be a very well-known American diplomat who unfortunately died too young. She is married to a Canadian. She comes to Canada many times a year. So that, if she is appointed, there's a big if there, but I would say connect with her. There's Blinken, Tony Blinken also is rumored to be the next national security advisor. He knows us intimately. He used to have his holidays in Canada, drive through Quebec, Gaspé. So this is good to connect earlier with these people. And for me, it's very interesting because these are not Susan Rice, but Tony Blinken is the son of one of my former friends when I was in Washington. So it gives you an idea of how old I am, but it's still good to see these people coming back. So that would be my advice to Kirsten. And also what I like about Kirsten Hillman, she's from within the Foreign Service. She's a career officer coming from the trade policy cone or sphere of foreign affairs. Now I suspect that the next 4 years, trade might give way to a more diverse set of issues, foreign policy issues. The Iran issue, for instance, I mean, is big. President Trump has kind of opted out of the Iran deal on nuclear proliferation. Now, a threat to attack Iran in the last couple of days. I think that thankfully his advisors are convinced it otherwise. But I suspect that there will be a new set of issues: environment, Anwar, defense, foreign policy. So my advice to Kirsten would be start keeping more or giving more attention to those issues.
Cool. So we've got one question from the audience. The question is, what are the trade opportunities Canada can consider to shift trade from US to other countries? As of now, 80% of exports to US comes, Canada accounts for that. So does Canada have other venues to export, shift from US to other countries?
Yeah, very good question. Again, not a new question. We used to ask ourselves that question when I joined the Foreign Service of Canada in 1966. So it gives you an idea that this idea of diversifying our trade is not new. We have tried a few policies to correct this trend. One used to be called the third option, organized or launched by Trudeau the father in the early 1970s. It really didn't work very well. It was good on paper, but ultimately the market decides where business goes. So I don't think that we will ever replace the US as our most important market. Already it's down to what it used to be. When I left Washington in early 2000, after almost 7 years there, it was 87 of our exports going to the US. Now it's down to 70. 87, 13% for 195 countries of the world. Now it's at least it's a 30% for the rest of the world. Ways of diversifying even more, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Obviously, the shift to Asia is understood in Ottawa. Canada, as a member of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, recognized that and played a key role in those negotiations. Kirsten Hillman was involved in that very, very much when she was in Ottawa. Unfortunately, the U.S. has opted out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but this is certainly the kind of diversifying mechanism. Another one, of course, will be the new deal with the UK. Once Brexit is done at the end of December, we'll see how our own bilateral trade negotiations with the UK will go. So Canada is very good when it comes to making bilateral deals and being active within multilateral fora. So I suspect that we will see the same aggressive attitude towards trade. After all, if we have a high quality of life, a high standard of living, it's because of the fact that we're an exporting country. 45% of our quality of life is GDP depends upon trade. So try to increase this, not doing this with the US, doing more with everybody, more with the US and more with the rest of the world would be a win-win situation for us.
All right, Guillaume, do you have any other question around this topic? Otherwise, we can shift a little bit gears here, and we'll talk a little bit about his personal life.
Yeah, maybe one last question. So, Mr. Chrétien, we had the Trump administration being a one-term administration, and Mr. Biden's administration is also expected to be a one-year administration, and then we'll see if Vice President-elect Harris will jump in his shoes. Is it good or bad for Canada to have one-term presidents, or it's better to establish, longer-term relationships over 2 terms?
The answer is if they are friendly to us, it's better to have 8 years. But if they're not friendly, I'm sure it's better to have only 4 years. But again, it's not for us to decide. Remember, again, we'll see. President Biden has indicated that he would do 1 term. Listen, 4 years is a long time. A lot of things could change. Will they convince him to change his mind? Will he change his mind? Some people are worried about his health. He will be the oldest president ever to come to office. We will see. But the answer to your question has nothing to do with it's more about the kind of relationship you have. I was there during 8 years of Clinton, almost 8 years of Bill Clinton. And it was difficult because you still have nasty issues like softwood lumber popping up, or Pacific salmon, or some terrorists being caught by them and not by us crossing the border. We never ceased to have issues with our American neighbor and friends, but it's much easier when they know that the president and the prime minister are aware of what's going on and are pushing for a solution. One, access. We have not discussed access to the U.S., but a few words about this. I was there for almost 7 years. I've been a deputy minister in Ottawa. I suddenly took that job, which was far more political than a public service. When you become ambassador to the U.S., you cease to be a public servant. You become a creature of the government that sends you there. We had tremendous access, and I found that following the American invasion of Iraq, so there was a cooling down there. Following the arrival of Mexico on the American scene, Canada lost a bit of its access. So I think now the stars are well aligned for us to regain some of the preferable access we had certainly when I was there. The special relationship might be over, but I hope that we can go back to greater access. You'll be interested in this. When I was there, it was Bill Clinton, and of course his chief of staff, his cabinet secretaries were all knowledgeable about Canada. But at some stage, I decided to write a speech. As ambassador, you have to write speeches occasionally, policy speeches. And then I decided to write one carefully over weeks of work with my colleagues. And the title was, Mr. President, Some Advice from a Friend and Neighbor. That was the title of my speech. So that was a bit risky because I was quite critical of some of the American policy, especially on UM's Burton, on Cuba, etc. So my colleagues, when we came closer to the event, told me, Raymond, if you pronounce that speech, they'll throw you out. You just cannot say that. You're going too far. So I said, listen, but that's the truth. We Canadians feel strongly about those issues. Well, why should I be able to put it on the table and openly? So they said it's too risky. So in order to satisfy their worries, I decided to check it out carefully. So I phoned the chief of staff of Clinton. His name was Mac McCarthy, and we had become good friends. I invited him to the Cirque du Soleil, and his wife was friend of my wife. So I phoned him. I said, Mac, have this problem. I'm getting ready to make a speech. Here's the title. It's quite audacious. I mean, who the hell I am to tell the president what to do? And my colleagues are worried that I'm going too far. And before delivering that speech in 3 days, I will send it to you discreetly. And if you tell me you're going too far, don't say it. I'll just cancel the event. I did that. I said, I need an answer within 24 hours. 24 hours later, he came back. He said, Raymond, okay, you go ahead. It's a bit tough, but we can take it. I said, Mac, are you certain that I'm not going to be thrown out? I mean, he said, Raymond, I'm certain. He said, I've shown it to President Clinton. He has read it. And he said, tell Raymond to go ahead. So that's the kind of access that I'd like Kirsten Hillman to have right now. I don't know if but to show you the importance of access, when you, in the spirit of confidence, trust, you can use back channels to make your point or get the answer you need. A long answer, Guillaume, to your question, but I think it might be of interest to your friends.
No, definitely. So why don't we use the last 15 minutes to maybe ask you a bit more questions on your career and maybe some advice for young professionals that are part of our association. So Saif.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I was young too, so let's go ahead. Ask me questions about that, and I'll tell you what I think about what you should do, guys.
Yes.
Gals as well.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, reading about your career. In 1978, you were the youngest ambassador in the history of Canada. You're a trained lawyer by profession. You wrote the bar exam as well. So I guess there was always a backup plan to go back to law. So I'm just curious, what was your aha moment when you joined the foreign services? What was your moment like, okay, I'm going to stick into this. I'm going to do this for life. And what was so compelling about it?
My answer might surprise you, but I'll tell you as it was. As you mentioned, I was a law student getting ready for the bar exams, and then I was also working for the government of Quebec as a student. My professor of corporate law, Julien Chouinard, was the deputy minister of justice, so he had given me a job to work in prisons, the prisons of Quebec City. So I spent 6 months making an inquiry, very discreet, on behalf of Claude Wagner, the father of the present Chief Justice in Ottawa, asking the détenus, people in jail, about their relationship with their lawyers. And that was a very tricky inquiry. So I did that for a few months, and then Julien Chouinard, my boss, offered me a job. And my wife said, listen, Raymond, I was already married. I got married very, very young. I said, Raymond, it's not for you. I mean, don't go into this business of criminology. It's not for you. So the Foreign Service exams were there. So I had to present myself to the examiners and write the hours of exams to join the Foreign Service. I was accepted. But then in the Foreign Service, at that time in Quebec, it was not very well seen to go into government. You know, very modestly, I can say I was among the very top of my class, and my colleagues were telling me, what the hell are you doing to go to a public servant? You're too good to be a public servant. Get out of there. So to make sure that I was not making a mistake, I decided to write the bar exams in case it didn't work. I said, if it doesn't work in Ottawa, if I don't like it, I'll come back to Faskin or any other law firm at the time. So I went to the Foreign Service. I never looked back. I never regretted it. I just loved it. I loved diplomacy. I loved public service. I love international affairs. I didn't join the public service. I joined the Foreign Service of Canada. And it has been my life for 40 years. And now in terms of advice for young people of your age, a couple of lessons. First, of course, is trust. Again, very, very important to rely on your instincts and have trust in the way you deal with others, and hopefully the way others deal with you. In Africa, in the Congo, I can tell you, I was there for 3 years. The president was a man called Mobutu Sese Seko, a very not an easy man to deal with. I was very young. I was 35, 36. I was there for 3 years. And then certainly in Africa, I realized the importance of making the other in front of you feel like an equal. In other words, listen to put yourself in the shoes, in the skin of your interlocutor. In Africa, for instance, in the Congo, it was very, very important. You know, I was dealing with a country that had been brutalized by Belgian authoritarianism, by Belgian colonization. So the Congolese leaders would look at you and decide, can we trust this guy? And you could earn that trust by the way you acted with them, the way you talked to them. So trust is very, very important. Of course, coalition is very important for lawyers, young financiers. Develop early on a network of friends and colleagues. I did that early on in the government, and it has served me well till today. You know, the young people that you start with, 25, 26, 28, they go up in their organization, and hopefully 15 years later, you connect with them in a very personal way because you have dealt with them, you have played golf with them, played tennis with them, you have done various activities with them. That's a very, very important. Mentors, very important. I had, when I joined the Foreign Service, 2 powerful mentors. Their name, Marcel Cadieux and Alan Gottlieb. One was the boss of, Cadieux was Gottlieb's boss, and Gottlieb was my boss. But they were my 2 mentors, and at crucial times in my career, I would not bother them with long discussions, but I would pick up the phone and say, I have this decision to take in the next couple of days. I'm inclined to go that way. Is it the right way? So a couple of decisions I made were made upon the advice of very experienced colleagues who had decided to help me along the way. Very important for you. But of course, you're living in a different world. Who the hell am I to give you some advice? But I'm risking myself still to say things like that. But go ahead if other questions of that kind. And also, I was curious to see how, being a senior public servant, I would adapt to the private sector. Coming to Fasken 17 years ago, I arrived here at Fasken. I had been offered a position by the 5 biggest law firms in Montreal. I chose that one because they had maybe the more constructive offer, but I didn't know how to use a computer. I didn't know how to use the telephone. I didn't know anything. So Claude Auger was the managing partner of our firm. When he left my office, he said, we got a long way to go with this guy. He doesn't know how to pick up the telephone. So being a senior public servant, you're surrounded by helpers. You're surrounded by people who are doing everything for you. So in the private sector, you have to be autonomous. I succeeded in making that transition. They hired me for 5 years. I've been with them for 17 years. So obviously, I must have done something good.
Of course.
Guillaume, it's d'accord.
Only agree, Mr. Chrétien.
Of course, and I'm just curious. You talked about mentors. You talked about 2 of your mentors.
About what?
I'm curious who is your current person. Like if there is something you want to chat about, you want to discuss about your next path or whatever. Who's the person Mr. Chrétien called? Is it Jean Chrétien, the former Prime Minister of Canada?
Good, Saif. It's a good question. I must tell you that I've reached a point in my life a long time ago, actually, where I no longer need a mentor. I've become a mentor. I mentor myself to a number of people, including some lawyers in this firm here 10 years or so ago. So, I'm 78 years old, so I don't need mentors. I just need to keep my sanity and my health to go until 100 years old.
Of course, but just wanted to chat about a little bit about your relationship with Jean Chrétien, the former Prime Minister of Canada. Yes.
Good question. Good question. Jean is, people think we're brothers. I'm 78, Jean is 87. We're not brothers. He's an uncle of mine. He was the second youngest of a family of 19 children. And I was the oldest of his oldest brother. That's why he's an uncle by blood, but we have more a brother relationship. So Jean was an orphan quite young. He was raised partly by my parents. He would spend all his summers with us at our cottage in Shawinigan. So it's a blood relationship that became a friendly relationship. So we're very, very close going back when when I was a kid. Very interesting when we were both graduates of Laval University. He wanted to go into politics. I was not really tempted by politics. There was a side of politics that I couldn't stand. So I decided to go into foreign service. And for years, we were kind of following different tracks, but we were living next to each other. So very close personally, but different tracks. He in politics, me as a senior public servant. But at the end, what I like is at the end of our lives in government, our trajectory is connected. When he appointed me to Washington, of course, I had a tremendous advantage of having been a deputy minister. I was one of the most senior diplomats at that time, but suddenly I had that background connected with my links to the Prime Minister of Canada. So nobody, when I was in Washington, could question my talking on behalf of the government of Canada. During the referendum of 1995, very difficult moment for our country, I was able to do things that no other diplomat probably could do, because I knew exactly how far Jean was prepared to go or not go. It was very pleasant for 7 years to work together there. And what I like, of course, is I was the only, very occasionally, was I not able to resolve difficulties between ministers on my own. Ministers, as you know, they all want to come to Washington, but it's the job of Kirsten Hillman right now, or it was my job then to orchestrate their visits to make sure that we don't hit the Americans all at the same time. And ultimately, when there was a serious problem between ministers, I would phone Jean as Prime Minister. Jean, now it's your job. I cannot resolve this conflict between X and Y. You deal with it. And Jean hated it. So I don't know why I appointed you to resolve those issues. Deal with it. But occasionally I could not do it. But it was interesting that it was very, very interesting. He would phone me in Washington, and we're both French speaking, as you know. I would tell him, Jean, be careful, be careful. The lines are all listened to by the Americans. Be careful what you're saying. And then we say, well, let's talk Joual. And nobody will understand. So we would talk some kind of dialect that would probably take the Americans a couple of more days to translate before they would know the message. So it was amazing for me, and I know he loved it. I could talk to you about this for half an hour, especially about how I was able to change his mind on key issues, and we would have very, very tough discussions. But again, as brothers, so it was profoundly satisfying.
Cool. And then Guillaume, I'm just going to ask the last question, and then I'll let you do the closing remarks. So in your 40-year career as a diplomat, or even a politician, I must say, because you were doing all these deals and everything, what's your major takeaway, on the global stage when you were solving complex problems? What's one takeaway you want to give us?
First of all, I don't talk of me as a politician. I've refused. I've been approached by conservatives, liberal parties many times. I've always refused to go into politics. I was even offered directly the job of foreign minister, which I refused because I didn't want to go to politics. But the major take, to answer your question, having indicated that I had no desire to go into politics. First of all, you should know that politicians play a role. We have a democracy, and this is how the system should work. But if you're good enough, bright enough, able enough to penetrate the upper ranks of the bureaucracy in Ottawa, whether it's the Bank of Canada, Finance, Foreign Affairs, you can have a lot of influence telling politicians what to do. So you don't have power. You don't have power, but you have a great deal of influence. What is power and influence? That's another debate. Now, my major take about what's going on in the world right now would be again this issue of trust. If there's no trust, it's going to be very rough for all of us, and that's what I'm worried about now between especially the triangle of the U.S., China, and Russia. There's clearly that is going to be difficult between Russia and the U.S. It's going to be very difficult between China and the U.S. Because there's very little trust. I mean, Putin and Biden, I don't think are going to get along very, very well. Russia has tremendous progress in terms of the strength, the quality of their army. They're threatening their neighbors. They have become again a very powerful country. China, the emergence of China is going to strike you. I mean, you have to deal with it for decades to come. What is China now? Is China an adversary, a friendly competitor? For some in Washington, it is an enemy. Clearly, on this issue, Republicans and Democrats have the same approach. The Americans are worried about the emergence of China, the military assertiveness of China, the trade power. I mean, the power of the Chinese economy. The last drop, or that would be for the Chinese to be the first to send a man to Mars. This is Rome versus it's Athens versus Sparta again. It's how can two major powers coexist? Does it lead to Cold War? Does it lead to hot war? This is the biggest issue for all of us to watch right now, and the trust has kind of disappeared. So I'm worried. That would be my major comment. Trust has disappeared from the management of international relations.
Well, Mr. Chrétien, thank you very much for having accepted our invitation. It was a great pleasure to have you and hear your thoughts on the world's politics and trade relations between Canada and the US. Thank you everyone for attending the event. We'll have future events in the coming weeks, probably Q1 2021. And as usual, we'll reach out by emails. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you very much for inviting. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I wish you, all of you, good success in your respective careers. The world is there for you to grapple. You're the future, and I will always be happy to talk to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.